And I'm telling you why maybe it's worth looking into high tech somewhere between the lines. Definitely it's the only project I'm promoting. And that's really the only way to look at it, as I have quite a few of these media outlets running. Okay, I see that now you're already absorbing it. Well, for that reason, quite solid reach. With time, of course, this channel isn't small, and it's constantly growing, developing, polish here. They're adding up to 5 at once, that's translated into English here. I produce on YouTube, Kick.com, Rumble, X.com and Twitch. Okay. Insane. Sorry for this very long introduction. You know, it's not my intention, of course, to... That's just extending it. But ultimately, I think I've eliminated all the errors. I messed up the key again. To the live stream, and therefore it just rejected my connection first. You know how it's called, those things do. It's always such a risk, just... Something gets forgotten. Something goes wrong. Even if it wasn't forgotten, something goes wrong. Getting messed up, and it's just like that. But it would already be the 4th day in a row if I hadn't, let's say, done this simultaneous live stream. And that would already be a little too much so. As you can see today, it's a bit earlier than days preceding it. Also, maybe it compensates a little for some additional delays. Anyway. So, yeah. Let's move on. Okay, so, good. Everything is recorded like this because it has to be recorded so that they can make shorts from it, so it's okay. And well, title of today's live stream is Mixed Signals. Yes, mixed signals. That's the impression of the market that it has. We have mixed signals regarding what potentially could happen based on what I've seen. Like I asked Grok on X.com, on X-Tweets. I'm saying on X.com so you get it. Simultaneous translation, to get it translated properly. I never normally say this, but because, well, these are the requirements so that it translates well, I'm a little tired of changing nomenclature. However, as I asked Grok said that, well, he said he wrote to me. In summary, the market has a bit mixed feelings about what's happening. Somewhere there's always been to, but somewhere on the other hand. So, yeah, let's move on. And I stubbornly insist that we'll generally have pretty good times. It seems like August will look much better, but it's just very mildly bullish. They zipped past Bitcoin. So, on Bitcoin, there's definitely a growth trend, right? Yeah. No, definitely not. It's bearish, but on hard coins it's bullish if we look at charts, because I was mainly talking about, of course. I started to say this. I was referring to the altcoins chart. That one is obviously growing, whereas it was happening in such a way that on the good That's why it wasn't really possible to trade it much. It was a terribly untradable month, unfortunately, despite the fact that from opening to closing, which at that moment will be happening so theoretically practically we are on green, but it was It was a terribly choppy month, very difficult to trade. However, I also expect the coming months to be increasingly good for trading, and will also be definitely choppy. Moreover, I believe there's a big risk of a sharp move in September. And this is something that some analysts are predicting. September could be a bad month due to seasonality, because September, it's generally bad statistically for crypto in months. And that's why I think it's not in the past it might have been scarce, let's say. No, it won't be clearing the market of altcoins. Yeah. Let's move on. Some regularity persists, the more statistically likely it is that this regularity will simply undergo some change. It won't deviate, that's how statistics work. I'm more inclined to see a 100% drop in the United States. So, that Fed pivot with the rate hikes. After a long pause, it should now be time for us to see some drops. Like the market is waiting for those cuts, and because it's a big event in the market, big events have it so that events, let's say, sales events, so-called sells. When they don't open any new markets, These events, if they don't open any new markets, they're just sales events, by default. Market actions. No, regarding the Fed pivot, it's certainly not opening any new markets, so automatically it has to be such a sell and hold. So that's why I expect it to be tense. But it's just triggered by that. However, it won't definitely trigger any kind of bearish trend, because it simply won't flow in that shape in September. There's still a lot. Let's say the CEOs are on vacation, taking their holidays in September, so that liquidity won't be. It will only manifest at full value in October, in November. Therefore, I believe the lack of unity will very much shorten the lifespan of this correction. Likely we'll have in September, as Jerome Powell basically confirmed. Even there was talk about 6 calculations of rates until the end of 2046, as far as I vaguely remember, because I heard it from someone. Quite a lot of drops. They were considering that we hadn't had a drop in a very, very, very long time, since 2022. As far as I remember, it was even the 21st century. So quite a few years ago. Now here's a whole bunch of things that were promised, and the justification is that it's just saving. The US labor market. That's the background for rate cuts, to inject more liquidity into the economy, to get a little more money. It was, let's say, just moving from pocket to pocket because, well, it was decided. It's one of the inflationary effects that people don't want capital to lie dormant in inflationary assets. Is melting away, you need to do something with it, and that forces such a velocity of money. Money velocity always increases it through the economy. Truthfully, this is a completely artificially induced effect, according to my point of view. It's far from an ideal solution, but as it is, it's this kind of convention of approaching the economy. And it would be much better if there wasn't inflation at all regarding the global reserve currency. I think in fact that holding capital by clients wouldn't really occur at all. That would just be freezing the economy and stratifying society. I think this process, because there's another process that's incredibly essential for economics, which is called habituation. But I'm saying, I don't decide how the world's economy looks right now. As it stands now, everything relies on a very inflationary dollar. That's why measures are being taken to master this labor market, in the United States and interest rates. Very strong positions to assume that a real reduction in interest rates will actually happen in September, and we'll have this sell event. It will be a sharp move, then an early one, still with incomplete liquidity, and then a recovery. JT, how it would behave during the holiday period. Everything. Somewhere there, let's say. I managed to guess it to a certain extent, because I said I was trying to predict how it would behave during the summer. Everything. Somewhere around there, I was able to somewhat guess it, because I said, first, that the second and third would be good quarters, and that the fourth quarter would also be good, but only somewhere there, let's say, up to mid-November. Also, the first part of the prophecy has pretty much come true, especially when looking at the charts of altcoins here. As for Bitcoin, this month has been a bit sick, a little bit, and from that side, I'll say, it's kind of messing with the accuracy of my prediction. But well, in total, like, we're looking at May, June, July. And now, August is just the red month. Looking at July, the body of the August candle is higher than the open. So, yeah. Let's move on. On the candles, and generally, even including this month, we're completing our fourth green month. But in that regard, I was thinking about normal candles and whale. No, there won't be any big revolution here from this point. Like we're only down 6% on this monthly candle. So, really, in every hour it can turn around. Recovering 6% is not really nothing like that. Calmly it can happen literally from moment to moment. And still a little now. We need to close this monthly candle because today's day has to complete it. And the whole tomorrow. So it's definitely possible that it will just happen like that. That it will actually happen. But as it stands now, it looks like this, as you can see on the screen. And this is naturally not. This is a bad representation. It doesn't signal any catastrophes. We have an all-time high. So, yeah. This is what in yell on brutality. Partially dutare. This is Let's move on. Like, just looking at how these monthly candles are looking, you know, it's obviously most sensible to look at them at the end of the week. A monthly, just at the end of the month. And what's here, meanwhile, on the weekly interval, this M formation? He mentioned it's hanging over us a little like the sword of Damocles. And it looks like it wanted to play out. It might still have a little room here, down here, of course, because it's a bear formation. But as you see, when we look at left side of the weekly candles, we're already entering support, aren't we? We're already diving into support. There are formations of convergences. We have here the whole idea, here with the knots, i.e. wicks. Manage the market makers if they want to liquidate derivative markets. Zone 4. So we're starting to enter a highly elevated probability, a very highly elevated probability that we'll see some bounces. If rebounds. Let me see if everything's okay, but it seems like it. Let's see if the translation is working as it should, if nothing happened there. Okay, it's working. So yeah. The quality of this translation should be a little better than the previous ones. Because I've introduced quite a few corrections, I hope it doesn't translate into increased delays. That's something I really wouldn't want to refine. I'm working on this script here to facilitate simultaneous operation. But for now I'm pleased that it's going live and nothing is breaking it. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's see how Bitcoin dominance is doing. And I saw that it seems to have started to come back a little. Okay. I initially saw it well. Yes, initially I saw it well. But I see now it's slightly recovering. But yesterday, as you see, the daily candle, she was falling on Bitcoin's dominance in red. And today, relative to the last few days, we were drawing a new bottom. Potentially, we can experience here a W formation, meaning a reverse corrective formation. But considering the bigger picture, simply the height at which we're currently operating on Bitcoin dominance, I think we're still maintaining a downward momentum. We're in the full swing. That here we might only have some short pauses, relatively short pauses, before we fall lower, yeah? If this is the case, then this is really where the correction should be. And we shouldn't hit any new, let's say, record levels regarding. And this is really the right correction, so it shouldn't be choppy. it should be fairly clean, without major disruptions, without any significant turbulence, because this uptrend that will generally lead to that peak we had in this cycle of Bitcoin dominance was very long, yeah, almost 3 years. It lasted almost 3 years. That's really very, very long, and it simply forces the operation of the free market. On this chart, that if it behaves like this, it means that when it starts to unwind, in quotes, he's going to have to do it in a really spectacular way, because how Bitcoin has behaved over the last 3 years. That was very strongly against the basic principles of a free market. Cryptocurrencies definitely work, operating in such a space. Just in the free market pricing, so we had a very strong disruption, let's say, of natural forces. It's such that you can't stop them all night because it's just it's no longer possible to keep holding on. Nature is doing its thing in a really spectacular way. I'm completely sure about it. That exactly the same thing will happen here, and that we are quite high in terms of dominance, because we were still at the peak on how high were we in the world? At 6, 10, 16% were we, right? We were on a good path to 70% Bitcoin dominance. That is about 80 and it's now an absurd result considering how developed the market is at this stage. An absolutely absurd level. So, we're still high. It's 58%. That's really high. Wait, let me check if the sound here is working properly. So, yeah, let's move on. And a good capital rotation from Bitcoin to altcoins, and, I know, altcoin season. Trying to make a meme because we're waiting for it, and it's not coming very, very long. So, pure dominance. The coin shows how long it also didn't want to decrease. No, but that means that this hype, that potential for growth locked in altcoins, that level of oversell, that level of unsatisfied demand. The market's lack of fulfillment is extreme, especially regarding that loaded aspect, because it's absolutely extreme and that has to bounce somewhere, like some kind of balance, let's say. Also, I'm absolutely convinced there's something to look forward to, despite the fact that such behavior of the market with us, as we experienced recently, wasn't the most pleasant. That's the rule of the market, that ultimately the cream drinks only those who are either the most patient or the most clever. Sometimes both, yes, they have to be. Not just the most patient, but also the most clever. And it's always been like this, and it will always be like this, regardless of what you might call the structure of the market participants, like whether it's 90% AI or like 95% AI and 5% human traders, or whatever proportion that may be, it will always manifest exactly the same way. Alright, let's see how the traditional market is handling it. I see the attendance today on this live stream isn't. Perhaps this hour is just too early. Like when I streamed a lot much later, the attendance was incomparably better, but at least I can see. I'm adding this because it's like compared to my reach as of now, and I wanted to mention it on the side because today I achieved. No, 500 followers, but I see one left just now, you know, it's fluctuating, let's say. I already had over 5. 500 at one point, and now someone else left, 499. But for the first time I exceeded 5.5, so I'm happy. That of course will translate into my reach, including my live streams, which also makes me happy with the news to all those. I won't be using translation anymore. I'll just be talking to you all in English directly. It's just, it doesn't pay off at the moment, you know? To do 2 live streams daily in my native language, and then another one in English. Every day I do a live stream in my native language, so this idea, let's say I do it in a temporarily efficient way, so I'll just do it with automatic translation, which I did myself, you know, because this script, let's say, this script for artificial intelligence, which is currently translating for me,